All right, welcome everyone to the 2021 edition of STEM Together, where we facilitate discussions involving industry professionals and students on everyday matters involving STEM. Now, today's topic is no stranger to us all. Its almost meteoric, earth-shattering impact was felt on our shores as early as January last year, with Singapore ending the year registering its worst economic recession in history. Now, the sustained aftershocks of this continue rattling our very foundations even today. But thankfully, the recession is showing signs of segueing into recovery. Now, before we reveal this topic and deep dive into discussion, let me first introduce myself and our invited guests today. Hi, everyone. I'm Danny from Science Centre Singapore, and I'm pleased to be the facilitator of today's discussion with two wonderful guests. Firstly, our industry professional, Sandhya Rajaraman from Rockwell Automation. Sandhya, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
And we also have a student representative, Cho Jian Dong from Commonwealth Secondary.
Hi.
Jian Dong, how are you?
I'm fine.
That's good. All right, so if you have guessed it right, today's discussion revolves around COVID-19, which isn't news to most of us, but it is making the news still. Now, today we plan to unpack how COVID-19 has affected our guests at work and also at study. Now, when the COVID-19 scenario kicked in, what happened and how did it impact your work and industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think initially it was probably a similar reaction to many people where we kept thinking, oh, it'll be gone by March, it'll be gone by April. And, it kept shifting longer and longer. So it took a while to really accept it. I think one really interesting thing, so as you mentioned, I work at Rockwell Automation and we're in the manufacturing technology industry. I think COVID really highlighted some problems with supply chain and manufacturing. There were shortages of masks in different countries, shortages of ventilators and things like that. So I think this industry is actually going to be pretty impacted going forward. I think countries are definitely going to be looking at some local manufacturing investments and things like that, so that we're not always depending on the global supply of products. So I think it's actually, this industry has been pretty hit in this whole situation.
Right. Well, thanks for sharing that. Let me flip this question over to JD. JD, tell us about school. Back when you first heard about COVID-19 school closure, where you had to study from home after that. How did that make you feel? Was there a difference from attending classes in person to suddenly attending classes virtually and things like that?
When I first heard the news that we are going to study at home for HVL, I was actually quite happy because I could just ignore the teacher talking and teaching us and open another tab and watch YouTube.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, it did impacted my learning, and halfway through HVL, I took some online tests for maths and English. I suffered a lot and I got around a fail grade and a D grade. So I started listening to teacher talking.
As an individual, as a work group, as a company, how did you navigate those challenges posed by COVID-19? And maybe in the second breath, you could also share if STEM applications played any part in transforming the way that you think and work.
Yeah, sure. So definitely from the early days, what helped the most is getting organized in terms of like who would be coming into the office which days, making sure that we have some ground rules for our meetings. Like we really tried to enforce keeping the video on so we could all still have some kind of personal communication and things like that. One thing that I want to mention is, in our company, we use the Agile Scrum development process. And for anybody who's not familiar, it's a lot of kind of like regular meetings to make sure things are staying on track. So I think this actually ended up really benefiting us because it forced us to stay in touch every day. We have a lot of update meetings and things like that. So it really forced us to keep talking every day and keeping the communication and personal connection there. So that was really helpful. I think another thing that we did to help with the challenges, and this is a bit more on the personal side too, but we tried to plan more like fun virtual activities and like games and things like that every few weeks, so that we were still doing things that, you know, before we took for granted, like being able to go out to lunch as a team and things like that. I think one more benefit that was really, it was unexpected, was that, you know, as I mentioned, we work a lot with teams in Europe and the US, and our headquarters is in the US. So before, we had a lot of scenarios where everybody in the US would be in one conference room, and then we would be on the phone kind of saying like, sorry, can you say that again? Like, you know, it was that kind of situation. So now everybody's remote in a sense. So it has actually made the environment more inclusive in a way. No more of, you know, being the only one who's not in the room, things like that. So I think in that sense, a lot of the technology aspect of it, like the video conferencing, everybody dialing in, and think that has also improved a lot in the recent years. So in that sense, the STEM aspect of it really helped, and also the Scrum methodology, which is used in a lot of STEM careers, also helped a lot.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. What about you, Jian Dong? How did you manage this transition? But what about the video conferencing tool? You being able to see the teacher, hear the teacher, and use the multimedia resources that the teacher has prepared, did that actually enhance your learning and things like that?
No, not really, because when we started learning to use, we were at home and no one was there to teach us, so it took like a few minutes or maybe half an hour just to start a meeting, and every time we have to let or invite a new teacher in, it took another few minutes or half an hour, so it disrupted our learning.
Was it actually quite easy to follow online?
It was quite easy to follow because the teacher had to make things simple, as some students couldn't keep up with the studies, as learning online it's harder and you learn lesser than learning in front of the teacher face to face.
Back to you, Sandhya. So would you say that the impact of COVID-19 is behind you at this point?
Yeah, I think there has been many positive impacts that I hope will continue. I mean, so some things that are good, or, you know, the recognition of being more flexible with schedules and being able to actually participate in some of these remote meetings, like I mentioned, in a more inclusive way. I think there have been also some conversations now. A lot of companies are starting to recognize mental health as a priority, and like Rockwell has been offering things like a helpline for anybody who needs some advice or things like that. And I know some companies are offering, like, you know, days off. People are more open to allowing people to take MC due to mental health, just a wellness type of thing. So I think those are really important things we should have probably had all along, but COVID has now highlighted that. So I think that's really good. I think one thing though is that I've seen is people are getting a lot less, maybe the right word is people are getting more out of shape, because you know, we're all just kind of sitting all the time, and I think that's been one big issue. So our team has been trying to do things like steps challenges, and you know, because some days it'll be like the only walking is you go from your desk to the kitchen to get some tea, and then you come back to the desks.
Maybe I'm going to swing over to JD. How are you coping with now having to learn from home as well as in the classroom? It's now a new situation for you, right?
So learning from a classroom has more benefits. You can ask the teacher after class when you don't know this question or that question. But during home-based learning, when you needed to ask a question, you have to ask for the teacher number and text her, and that's too inefficient.
Right. So at this point in time, have you gone back to school to do all of your classes in school, or are you doing some of the lessons at home sometimes?
We do most of the classes in school, but sometimes we have to do home-based learning, as if a second wave come by, we are going to be fully adapted to the thing we are using.
Right. So that in itself is like a new situation, isn't it? Where you're having a mix of both now. All right. So what's your hope for the future?
I actually have to thank the COVID-19 for something, because last year our primary school leaving examination we had HBL, so they cut out some topics for math, and thank God for that I passed math.
And thank you also, Sandhya, for sharing a bit of your life in the COVID-19 recovery era, put it this way. I definitely learned much from both of your candid sharing, and I hope the rest of our viewers did too. Now, for viewers, if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed to our channel, please hit that notification bell to subscribe. And if you're watching the STEM Together series on Facebook, click follow. Now remember to like and share this video with all your friends, and stay tuned for our next conversation. This is Danny with my guests, Sandhya and JD, signing out. Bye-bye.
Bye.